right, Mr. President, I think we are back on. Okay, so we don't have anything in your files. Shelley, if you're going to introduce yourself, hit the button and green means go. There you go.
There we go. Hello, everyone. My name is Shelley Testison, and I'm a Senior Director for Pharmacy Practice Compliance at Walmart.
But I think what Shelley has is a request. I think it's a verbal request because we can't do PowerPoint, to have a discussion with the board about a different type of product for final verification, slightly different than what the board has seen in the past. That I'll turn over to Shelley.
That's correct. All right. Wonderful. Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the board staff. Thank you for the time today to make this request for Walmart and Sam's Club pharmacies in the state of Arkansas to utilize an image or virtual verification system for our pharmacies. Image or virtual verification allows the pharmacy to check labeling, container contents, total product via images in Connexus, which is our pharmacy operating software. The filling process will be updated to collect 3 images. Those 3 images would be the drug on the counting tray, so the pills on the counting tray, the contents inside the amber vial, and then the label affixed to the prescription vial or the stock bottle. After capturing the images, the pharmacist will perform a visual verification via those images. And the pharmacist must view all images captured in order to proceed with accepting the final visual verification to ensure the accuracy and filling of the prescription. The pharmacist must view all images. So all images of the tablets on the counting tray, the pictures down the throat of the stock bottle, and then the pictures where the label is affixed to the prescription vial, to ensure accuracy in filling the prescription. If for some reason the images cannot be captured, there is an exception process that will allow pharmacists to verify the prescription contents physically, manually. And if for any reason the pharmacist wanted to verify the contents manually, they would be able to utilize that same exception process to go grab the bag that the filled prescription is in and physically verify the pills. Currently, at this time, this process will be utilized for non-controlled substances. Controlled substances, liquid medication, and orders without a stock image available in our visual verification system are not eligible for virtual verification at this time. And also at this time, the verification will be performed on-site at the pharmacy that filled the prescription. And we will continue to have an audit trail that captures every person that played a part in the processing of the prescription dispensing. And every prescription label and the contents will continue to be verified by a pharmacist. Virtual verification will help streamline the visual verification process and enhance the quality and safety standards in several ways. Pharmacists will no longer have to locate the specific will call bags for verification, and the streamlined process will help reduce clutter in the pharmacist's workspace, reducing the incidence of prescription errors. Pharmacists will also have improved visibility to the contents of the amber vials. Currently, our pharmacists open the amber vials, pour a small portion of the contents into the lid, and assess the visible content. Virtual verification images will provide the visibility to the shape, size, color, type, and markings of every tablet on the capsule on the counting tray. And the imaging technology that we will utilize will ensure that the correct drug is being counted and the correct quantity is dispensed. Filling accuracy will also be improved with this technology. The shape, size, color, and type of dosage form will be verified through imaging technology to ensure the correct drug is actually being counted on the tray. And then, of course, that the correct quantity was dispensed. The quantity will be verified and the pill count is corrected in 99.92% accuracy with the technology that we're utilizing for the filling process. And that technology for filling has been in production in other pharmacies outside of the state of Arkansas for 4 years and is constantly being refined and validated, which is how they got that accuracy number. Both pharmacists and home office support staff will be able to access virtual verification images at a future date, aiding in resolving quality concerns, patient complaints, et cetera. And we are also integrating NDC validation through barcode scanning for accuracy, as well as capturing the lot number and expiration date on prescription fills. The lot number capture will help improve drug recall execution and prevent recalled medications from being dispensed. And expiration date capture will allow hard stops to be built into our system to prevent expired medications from being dispensed and aid in facilitating of the removal of expired drugs from the inventory. Our checkout process will continue to be the same, and that does require barcode scanning of the individual prescription bottles before dispensing the prescription to the patient. And of course, all counseling procedures will remain the same, where pharmacists must counsel on all new prescriptions. Walmart employs a robust quality assurance program to ensure accuracy in prescription filling and verification processes. The program provides a means of analysis for identifying, correcting individual and systemic quality concerns on an ongoing basis. Virtual verification will assist in the quality assurance monitoring, as the images would be retrievable for analysis should any quality or safety concerns arise as well. So with all of that, we would like to ask if we would be able to utilize our virtual verification processes in Arkansas.
You're talking about deploying this type of technology in every community store?
Correct.
Okay. Now, having seen the central fill in Northwest, and you have a station where there are pharmacists that are looking at the contents on the screen, how is this different from that?
This is in our community retail pharmacies.
So the only difference is location?
Well,
Well-
no, because what she's saying, I believe, is that the pharmacist is no longer going to see that pill in the bottle. They'll see an image of it. So instead of a basket coming to you and you looking in that bottle and verifying that that drug is actually in there, they're going to see an image of a drug, but the bottle will go straight from the technician to the will call bin. Is that correct?
Correct. Our plans are to put it in a staging area for now, but yes, that's right. The pharmacist will not have to physically get the bag to verify the prescription. Everything will be imaged.
Do you have any examples of these photos?
I do not have anything that I can share at this time.
And do you have this in place in another state yet?
No, we do not have this in
So we're
place.
the
We are
pilot?
planning to deploy in the fall.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, or test, I guess I should say pilot in the fall.
So where did you get the error data? Because I thought I understood you
Yep.
to say that this was already being used somewhere.
The vendor that we're partnering with has this technology at use in other pharmacies in other states where it's allowed.
Oh.
And that's where that accuracy data comes from.
Is the pharmacist who looks at the virtual verification thing located in the same facility that's dispensing the drug?
Yes, that is our plans as of right now, that they will
I
be
don't know, what-
physically located in the
What do
same
you mean
pharmacy.
right now?
Maybe in the future, after we have more experience with it, we would look at a shared service type model, but for now, we are keeping everything. If the prescription is filled in that pharmacy, the image will be verified at that same pharmacy.
Okay, second question, to what extent are you using or do you plan to use artificial intelligence as a second opinion for what the pharmacist is virtually verifying?
For right now, our artificial intelligence or the technology we're using is helping with the filling piece of it to ensure that whenever the technician is pouring out the pills onto the counting tray to make sure we have the right quantity for the patient, there's technology, AI, that will ensure that the dosage form, the size, the color, and the dosage form, size, color, there's one other piece, type. So that it's either a tablet or a capsule match. And if there's something that does not match with that technology, it actually puts a box around it, calls it out to the technician, and will not allow them to advance until that is corrected.
Well, it seems to me that what would and could and perhaps should be added to that is the picture of the label, which I don't take it is being caught by what you're doing now with artificial intelligence.
We are taking a picture of the label, so the pharmacist will be presented with the pictures. So the pharmacist at our visual verification will see an image of the tablets on top of the counting tray. So they'll be able to see the quantity, And then they'll have good pictures and be able to tell the size, color, type, any markings that are on the tablets. They'll see that on the image. And then there's also going to be an image of those tablets being poured into the amber vial. And so they'll be able to see that those same tablets got poured into the amber vial. And then they'll also get a picture of the label affixed to the vial so they can view the label and compare it with any information to ensure the prescription's filled accurately.
And that's the new virtual verification thing that you're talking about.
Correct.
But what my point is, where you're using artificial intelligence now, it's not seeing a label, correct?
No,
Thank you.
Who's the vendor for this?
outcomes.
Remind me in my mind's eye what I recall seeing as the final verification for Central Fill.
Mhm.
I thought that I saw them with something, that they were looking at something on the screen. So tell me what that final verification looks like at Central Fill.
At Central Fill, currently our pharmacists are physically verifying every tablet. In the past and in our other facilities, they do have the ability to verify the image via prescription. So at our Central Fill pharmacies, that is correct. We take a picture of the tablets in the pill bottle. And so at our other facilities, they're able to use that as the final verification.
I think the one in Bentonville, right, though, they have a picture of the tablet, like it
They
would just
do.
be a stock photo of a tablet. It's not the actual one of in the bottle. So what they're
They-
verifying when they look at it is a stock photo of whatever the drug is, compare that to what they're seeing in the bottle, pour it out, put it back.
They actually have both. So they have the stock picture and they have the
Yeah,
image
but-
in the
but they're-
bottle.
But they're picking it
And-
up and looking at each of those.
Correct. And for this process as well, and all of our other pharmacies across the state, we will still have that stock image picture that that the pharmacist can use to verify that the tablets match.
And
So I can see in a Central Fill and the flow of things, how they, come from bottle to label to drug, and it finally comes to that final point. What I'm having a hard time visualizing is how the virtual and the physical logjam at the end in a store. So if everything's being done virtually, where does the product end up relative to because if the final verification is being done virtually, but in a store, typically at this point, it's however it's being done, whether you're looking at an image of the script or the tablet or whatever, you still got the product right in front of you, finalize it, you bag it up and you're done. But where, I can't understand the disconnect between where does this physical product end up and how does it end up getting bagged separate and apart from the visual virtual verification?
Yep. So at Walmart, we keep all of our filled prescriptions in bags. They're opaque bags. And so our technicians, when they go to fill the prescription, they scan a barcode on the bag and that's where they place all of the filled prescriptions. And that's what goes to the pharmacist for verification currently.
Okay.
That part will remain the same. So we will continue to use the bags. The filled prescriptions will remain in the bags. The only thing that changes is that it will go to the will call bin, not to a pharmacist verification rack on their workbench. And we currently use a barcode scanning at checkout where the technician that's checking out the prescription scans each individual bottle to ensure that it's accurate for the patient and goes to that patient that we have pulled up in Tasco, which is our kind of automated will call bin. And so that process will remain the same.
So that's where bagging errors would be caught or prevented.
Correct.
Can you, if you were to problem solve this process, where would you see, and albeit the error rate of what you said, 99.92% accurate, so,
Now that was for the counting of the pills.
okay. So you don't know an overall error rate from your vendor as to what an anticipated error rate is in total?
I do not have that information.
Okay.
I only have the accuracy rate for the counting of the pills.
So have folks, I mean, I can imagine that they have, but have they problem solved the process and can you identify where the weak links are and what the result could be downstream from that if an error were to occur at any given point?
That's what we're currently doing, and we're ensuring that our policies are written to account for any errors like that. And then we also have our continuous quality improvement team that will continue to assess and make updates and changes as needed. So we're constantly looking at our processes to improve them.
So where in the virtual process, so you've got a copy of the label, you've got the contents and you've got them on the tray.
Mhm.
I mean, where in the process are those images being taken relative to? Because it seems like, so you got the virtual process the pharmacist is involved in. And then you've got the physical process, which the technicians presumably are involved in, unless a pharmacist picks up and does that part of the role. So they're moving along parallel. That,
Well, it's still one after the other. The technician will do the filling process and they will take all the pictures. The device that we have partnered with Outcomes to have, it has a stand and it's an iPad and it takes a high quality photo of it. So whenever the technician is filling, they are physically taking the photos using this device and technology. And then after all of that's complete, then it passes on to the pharmacist to do the verification.
virtually.
Correct.
And-
Well,
and
by
the-
image
And the physical product ends up in the bagging system.
in the will call back.
Okay.
Yes. After it is verified by the pharmacist by the image.
The pharmacist never sees the actual product, correct?
They
I mean,
would,
once it's filled, but the technician fills it, they bag it, it goes in, all they see is the verification. They don't ever see that product again, right?
they would see the pictures that were taken by the technician.
And you said that a different pharmacist will be doing the visual verification,
A different.
like
pharmacist.
when they're in the store, if you're doing if it's that's on site, so that means you're gonna have a pharmacist that's doing the visual verification on site. And then a pharmacist that's another pharmacist, and explain how that workflow goes.
No, the workflow is going to be the same. It's still our same workflow process where we receive the prescription, it goes to input. After the technician inputs the prescription, then it goes to the pharmacist that's working that day
Okay.
for input verification. Then it goes to filling. It's just a different filling process. And then after the prescription is filled, it would go to verify.
So even in the store, it's not remote. The
No,
pharmacist that's there is actually looking at the pictures.
they are working in the pharmacy that day, looking at the pictures in our visual verify screen. Yes.
And you are planning to do it remotely at some point?
It's something that we would maybe explore in the future, but right now what we are only looking at is inside the facility.
But once the prescription's filled, other than the picture, there's no verification by the pharmacist.
The
They don't actually see
pharmacist-
the product.
They will only verify by image. That is correct.
So what prevents the technician doing something in between the time they take the picture and the pharmacist didn't actually see it? They only saw the virtual image. What's the safeguard in that interim?
So
I mean, they can take the right pictures, but how do we know they put
it's,
it?
we control for that in our policies. And so after they take the picture, they place actually the lid would be on the vial. After they take the pictures, it immediately goes into the bag and then that bag goes to the staging area. But if at any time a pharmacist has a concern, they can physically grab the bag and look at whatever they need to look at.
I have two questions. I think I may have misheard, but at one point I thought you said that the second image was of the pill through the throat of the stock bottle, but it's actually through the throat of the,
Amber vial.
okay.
So yes, and we could do stock bottles as well. We could take if there is a
Yeah.
stock bottle that doesn't need to be open, it's the right quantity, right, everything. The pharmacist or the technician can still scan it and then take the pictures of the bottle. They can show that it's a sealed stock bottle and then they can place the label on it and take the same
But
pictures.
there is a picture of which pill is in the actual bottle.
Yes.
Okay, and then my second question was, so with the staging area, so say a patient comes to pick up a prescription that's done but not verified, it cannot be overridden.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. It will not be eligible for pickup
Okay,
in our will call bin.
So you're using an outside vendor's technology. And obviously, it's not currently allowed in the state of Arkansas, but do you have a beta site where you've sort of begun to run this? That it can actually be viewed?
Not yet. We're hoping to launch some pilot stores in the fall with this technology. We're allowed by the state.
Can I simplify what you're talking about here? That if your new process went into play you would have a situation where a pharmacist actually never laid eyes or hands on the actual drugs or the bottle itself. They would just see a picture of the drugs in the bottle.
They would see the images of the prescriptions through the filling process.
And that includes filling. I presume the pills are being laid out in the counting tray and so forth by somebody other than a pharmacist.
Technician, that's correct.
Okay, so again, what you're asking for is that the virtual is that a physician never, a pharmacist never lays eyes or hands on the actual drug itself or the container the drugs are placed in, just a picture.
I think it's fair to say that the pharmacist would never physically touch the container, but they would see the pills and the contents that went into the amber vials by images that are taken at filling. So they would see the pictures and know what drugs were placed into those prescription vials. But they would not physically touch them.
Okay, not to put too fine a point on it, though, to divide that line a little bit, they're not seeing the actual, they're seeing an image, but of what's purported to be the bottle, but it's, I mean, given the way that it currently works is the verification is done with your hands on. And you've got
Correct.
all these other tools, but it's purported to be the actual product, but you kind of taking it by faith that is in fact.
With the multiple images, you have to take an image of the pills on the tray and then you put the pills into the amber vial. And the pharmacist would be able to see if those pills that are on the tray are different from the ones that are in the vial, because you would be able to see from the image if there was a difference there.
Well, I think it's important to recognize, Dr. Mercady brought up that point a moment, I think it was you that said it, that it is not a stretch at all for all of a sudden this to become a remote order entry or remote verification or even a central fill thing where now a pharmacist, not even in the store, may be involved in this virtual.
I would actually contend that if the board decides that it is not an issue to do it this way, I don't know that it matters at that point.
Whether they're
Because
in-state or
because
in-
you could actually have a pharmacist in a less chaotic environment that's not in that store that might be better able to view it if the board thought that this virtual verification was workable. If I've got just a second, I'm gonna split one hair to talk about thought processes of the way we've had this presented in the past to differentiate what Dr. Tustin is describing versus what the board has seen as a more recent visits. The more recent stuff, and Dr. Richmond, I think this is what you're thinking about, is we have had proposals where virtual verification wasn't looking at a proposed or a supposed final product. It was, if we scan that we're putting the right pill in the robot makes no mistakes. And therefore, whatever happens after that, it's considered a pre-final check. So that is a completely different subject than this is in a basket. And instead of the pharmacist picking it up and laying eyes on it, taking pictures of the actual final product. So I do want to split the hair of the last couple of times the board has been asked about this. You were being asked to approve a final verification product of something that wasn't even a final product. Now, I have people who be mad at me when they watch this on YouTube because they go, well, the robots don't make mistakes. But I mean, any piece of technology can make a mistake. I appreciate the fact that you have, we can't look at the error rates. I'm sure they're protected. They're probably going to an ERO or something where we can't go back and double check it. But I appreciate that you have an error procedure that at least acknowledges that there could be an error, but it is a minute error in that. But the last thing I would kind of reiterate is, other than this being somewhat different, I know the board, we're visual people, and I know you're trying to conceptualize it. And we probably, if we had to draw it on paper, we'd have about 6 different ways of the way I think it would work versus all of us looking at one, presentation. But with that, I don't think I would differentiate whether or not this is in the store or out of the store, because the fact that I think it's going to be the same experience when it is a virtual verification regardless. Just like I think the board has allowed, if I have a technician, we get a prescription and we scan into the system, well, a technician at a separate store could input it. And a pharmacist at another store could do a virtual verify of that input into the computer. And I don't know that that has necessarily cost us safety, because it's, the people have to be willing to do it. So they've got to be in an environment where they have the time to do it.
I agree that there's probably no differentiation between at all. But that's my point.
Yeah. I think if you accept one, you're already contemplating accepting both.
Absolutely. And that would not be a leap to see that as the
Yeah.
next request. Yeah, and it's like the proverbial getting the camel getting his nose under the edge of the tent. Once the camel's in the tent, you ain't getting him back out. And this is that we're at that point where we're about to, on life's edge, make the leap from pharmacist still has tie to that physical product to it's gone.
Well, and I'll play, this will sound funny. I'll play Johnny Rewind for a minute. And I know Dr. Newsom saw this previously, and I think Dr. Mack may have seen this as well. Years ago, we had a different corporation that had the thought process of the pharmacist up front only. And everything that was a physical preparation of a prescription product happened behind a wall. And Dr. McCrady's sitting here reminding us, like, I believe the board approved in that pilot program for the pharmacist to be able to do all of that verification as virtual, but the pharmacist was full-time in a seat outside of the prescription preparation area to specifically only talk to patients, basically. If there was a problem, they'd have to get up and go back into the prescription filling area, and it was all in one store. But tell me if we're misremembering that, but I think that you did allow this type of situation for that pilot project. Now, that business model, they did not continue with it, so we didn't get the follow-up on it that I think the board had asked for because it went away. But the board has contemplated and allowed a similar situation in the past as a pilot program.
I think the difference though is we had documentation from the company that was going to be hosting that program, that was selling that program. And they came in with pictures and that to show us how the procedure worked so that the board could look at it, follow and say, yeah, I think that's a good idea. But
Yeah,
we don't have that today.
I think this is all great technology in addition to what's going on today in the pharmacy. But, for me personally, I'm not comfortable handing that over. I still think we catch a lot of errors that are that visual verification. We still have errors where bottles are scanned and the wrong drug ends up in the wrong labeled vial that we're seeing today and hear about. And so I don't see how I don't see how in the visual you can see that the right drug got in that. I have a hard time visualizing that and how that would work and that we potentially could be preventing some pharmacists from catching errors, by instituting this. That's just my opinion.
So also, I think it sounds like a great enhancement. I guess the only thing keep going through my mind is, can that tech, any tech, or those in her pocket, put anything else she wants in the bottle and the pharmacist only see the good pictures and doesn't see what? Now, obviously, they're right there. They should see it all, but we also know that things happen that you don't see. I just wonder, it just seems like there's a little bit of a loop that isn't very protected. Which
think,
things
yeah.
can happen. I'm sure you have policies against it, no doubt.
I think
but I'm
even
saying-
without fraud, it's just really cumbersome for the technician in general. That's a lot of pictures. That's a lot of places to make errors and to me, I'm like, well, we've all seen technicians batch fill. They're not supposed to. It's in every policy not to, but it's done. And if they just accidentally are like, oh, I forgot to take a picture, I need to retake that picture, and they grab a bottle and it's a picture of a bottle that's not, it just seems to me like they're still missing that final safety
So
net.
We have
If I
lots of
could add-
informals. We have lots of informals where you see them come in that the policies are all there, but they circumvent them all the time. We see it at informal every time we have an informal.
If I could add to that batch filling concern, the system will not let you advance. So if you have not taken that picture, you cannot advance to the point where you put the prescription in the bag where you have another prescription to fill. So you have to complete and take that one fill all the way through the process before you can move forward and start filling that next prescription.
Right, but can they not have like multiple bottles set out, ready to roll and just?
They should not. No, not with the way our workflow
Sure,
works.
I understand.
Right,
Yeah.
but our workflow feeds to you. So in essence, our technicians don't know what fills are coming next. They get their next prescription to fill on on a handheld device. And so they don't know what they're filling until it pops up on the handheld.
I think it would be really helpful if we could have some sort of image or like just not in our imagination trying to figure, because it could be that these questions are answered, but not being able to see that.
Yeah.
Is tricky.
I guess the doubting Thomas in me is enough that it's hard enough, it's easy enough to visualize, but it's hard enough to be able to take it on faith. But short of a pilot project, which I guess is what you're asking for.
I think we could be amenable to that. However, it would depend on what the details are. Would that be just a few pharmacies to test it and then we come back and report and
I
potentially
would
roll
say
out the
you bring your
others?
vendor and let them show us what you're asking for.
Yeah, do a formal presentation or have them do a formal presentation. Because the board oftentimes will approve as presented, and that way the actual record includes that. Because we've had a couple instances where we've later found out, wait a minute, what was presented is not what's happening, so the whole thing was back off the table. I realize that's something you can't share right now, but the vendor could.
Before we get to a pilot project, I think Dr. Richmond has raised an extremely valid point. I do not like the idea of the pharmacist being totally removed from the physical handling of the prescription. Now, I like what you're talking about as a safety check. Maybe even having AI do the overall safety check when it can see the bottle and the pictures and all these things that blows a red whistle to say there's something going wrong here. But I don't like removing the pharmacist from the loop. That's the whole point of having a professional pharmacist, it seems to me.
I hear what you're saying, but the way I look at it, we're not removing the pharmacist at all. They're still responsible for that verification. They're just doing it by images instead of physically handling the bottles.
Not to argue with you, do you think a physician would diagnose a patient by just looking at a series of photographs from the patient? The physician would want to be there.
Absent a radiologist is what you're
Well, that's
asking.
true. We gotta leave them out. But that's the core of the problem that I'm seeing with this.
I have another, to piggyback off of what Dr. Boone said earlier. I'd like to know, whenever the image presents to the pharmacist, is everything on one screen in insets, or are they sequential, like the stock image and the picture of the label and the picture down the throat of the vial? Are those all present on the screen at the same time?
Yes, yes, they are. And you can hover over the image to blow it up. And if we have to take multiple pictures, the pharmacist would have to click through every image.
Check each one to
Correct.
proceed, not check the page.
Correct. No, you
It's like
don't
a
check the
captcha. You have
page.
to check every one that.
Each
applies.
image must be verified before we can move forward with the total verification of the prescription.
Verification, is it a tick, or is it an initial, or is it a thumb, or
It's a click.
it's a
We
click?
have a
Okay.
click, but you would have to click through every image and then you would accept the visual verification as a whole. And the way the visual verification screen is set up currently and the way it's planned is you would have the patient information in one corner. Below it, you would have the picture of the vial with the label on it so you can read the entire label. And then you would have the stock image of the pill, and then you would see the pictures on the tray. And then you would click through that picture of the tray image. That's where you would click through the different pictures to look at that and then down the throat. So you would see all of that on the screen, and then you would click through the
Okay,
tray.
so
and
here's
the-
where I'm headed with that. I think initially, everyone would look at, the pharmacist would look at every image very carefully because they're developing their comfort level with it. But I think after they've used this process for a year, they know how to go click, click, click. I moved on to the next one. Click, click, click. I've gone on to the next one. And that speeds the process, but it doesn't necessarily allow enough time for the view, because you're having to assume what's going on in their head, but then there are time pressures for them to process and check as many prescriptions as they can in a specified period of time. And I don't see how not allowing the time for a bottle to be handled, opened, viewed, that's a slower process. And I think that's a benefit because it allows the mental processing of it to be guaranteed it's taking place, as opposed to bing, 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 just like your DURs. Well, not necessarily a DUR, but pop-up alerts, they become background noise. And I think I just see something in this that makes me really uneasy.
I was going to take you to the next point. The DUR has become that because you can use the audit trail that is generated by your system, and you can tell that 2 seconds was spent on a DUR, but yet the DUR was on a digoxin dose of 2.5 milligrams instead of 0.25. And anybody who was thinking about it would have caught that, but it click, 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 2 seconds, you were through it and it was missed. And so I do have that same concern that it would, in an analogous way, allow for the clicking through when you get to the pressure point, when if you have a system that still requires you to actually physically slow down and look at that, that it gives you the time to respond properly.
Which the pharmacist would still have adequate time to view the images. The expectation is still the same. You need to do a robust visual verification. And so that time to do a robust visual verification by looking at the images would still be expected, and the time would be allotted at Walmart.
Well, the only thing that's holding you up is how fast you can click.
They're still responsible for ensuring that the prescription is filled correctly.
You're right, they are.
I think part of what we're discussing and maybe struggling with is not the policies and procedures, because I'm sure that those will be exemplary, but the actual implementation of those, and a single individual person deciding to make a violation on their own without the knowledge of your corporation, but still putting the patient at risk.
I just think we've had, this is like a major shift in how pharmacy works when you're talking about pulling a pharmacist out. And for much, much more minor technological advances, I guess you could say, we've seen like pretty significant presentations that were in depth and showed us step by step how everything worked. So it seems to me like we're lacking pretty significant information to make a decision today. That's my.
And I'd say that's not Walmart's presentation, it's actually outcomes. Yeah, I mean, it's.
That's
you
what
know,
I meant. I meant the actual.
But
company
wouldn't
that
it be
does.
both? Because we want to know how Walmart's going to utilize it.
Well, I mean, potentially, yes. I think that you have the software, hardware package from the vendor that, well, the way we've handled other things, like we would see the vendor for a interoperability with a pharmacy and assisted living center. And once they have generally presented under that presentation, if it's approved, it's for that pharmacy as well as others under the same type of policy. So I think there are issues in this that are concerned with the vendor outcomes. And I think there are concerns that are about the implementation of that vendor product, which would be the specific pharmacy.
Pharmacists.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we- Yeah.
It's gonna come back.
I mean, we had virtual verification that was turned on at one point by someone without approval, and we didn't hear about it from the company. We heard about it from the pharmacist. It was not Walmart, but like it was like an immediate, almost visceral, angry reaction.
So Shelley, in the central fields, do they use only images or do they actually see the prescription too?
At our central fill in Arkansas, they physically touch the pill bottles. So they lift the pill bottles out of the pucks and they do their verification that way.
Yeah.
At our other central fill facilities, it's a similar,
Verification.
we call it, PV1. It's where the pharmacist will verify what goes into the
The main.
automated unit, and then the pharmacist verifies a percentage of what goes through the system.
We just worry, I would say as y'all are finalizing this, kind of figure out something a little more than policy that kind of prevents the bad person doing the bad thing.
Understood.
If we're going to see a presentation on software or some system, I think it's important that we see the way the process works from the counting to the pill and documentation through the delivery to the patient. I think it's a mistake for us just to look at a piece of that process without looking at the entire process.
I think with this one, it would show every step of the process, not just, I mean, we could have someone that says, here's our process just for the final verification. But what Dr. Tussin is actually describing is how it is a piece by piece building of that, so that when the pharmacist sees the final verification, they see the entire package put together. But it's from, here's the bottle I'm pulling off the shelf, here's what it looks like, or whatever scanning we do of it. Here are the pills on the tray, here are the pills in the bottle, here's a picture of the bottle label and the bottle and a picture down the throat. So it's, to your point, Harold, I think you're right, is it has to show the whole process, not just, hey, here's the final check, picture down the throat of the bottle to show it's the right pills in there.
Well, I think what also has to be concerned is the pharmacy has different interests by all of these processes. For example, you might want to be able to demonstrate to a patient who complains, I got the wrong drug or I didn't get enough pills, that you did. But you also got to satisfy the problems with regard to pharmacy rules and malpractice laws and all kinds of other things with the documentation.
Yeah.
So that's why I think that the whole picture is important to have it all together.
I agree.
I'll just say, personally, I have always appreciated at an appropriate level the effort that Walmart has put together technology and from a technical standpoint, that it's very difficult to make a mistake in the Walmart system, that if you follow the procedures and technology that's put in place, it becomes very difficult to make a mistake, and that more often than not, beyond that, it becomes judgment issues, and those will always be things that are outside of technology. But at the same time, I think we've reached kind of a pivotal point on this one, and this one, it's the dividing line that if you go over it, now the pharmacist is forever disconnected from that physical product and whatever it is, that at that final point of verification with the drug in the pharmacist's hands, that if you've taken it out, now you're down a slippery slope. So other comments? I think we've kind of arrived at what we'd like to see, more information, have a formal presentation.
Okay.
But are there other thoughts or comments?
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Shelley. Are you gonna sit on that back row again, though?
Heard what John said about the back row.
Liz, you want to come on up and we get one of these microphones going for you? If you hit the button that says push and then release it, it should turn green, which means go. There we go. If you can introduce yourself to the board, and I'll tell you kind of who you're talking to and a couple things about our procedures.
Sure. My name's Elizabeth Smith.
Currently, I work for Arkansas Children's Hospital in the IT department. I've been a pharmacist since 2007, graduated from KU. Stayed there for several years. In 2016, I had the opportunity to come to Arkansas, back to my home state, and be the director of pharmacy at Baxter Regional Hospital. I've also owned my own pharmacy in the state, in Viola, Arkansas, and then went to work at Arkansas Children's.
So, listen, I'm John Kirtley. I'm the Director of the Board of Pharmacy. On this side of the table, we are staff members here at the board, myself, Ms. Ashley Bales, who's our legal counsel and attorney, Dr. Brenda McCready, who's our assistant director. On the other side of the table, you have our 8 members of the Board of Pharmacy that are decision makers here today. I'm going to look at Ms. Bales and say, we're treating this like it's an informal for the, or kind of, sort of, with Dr. Smith asking about the potential to get her license reactivated. In this process, because it's not a full hearing, even though it is the full board, with this, at some point in the board, we're going to have our staff kind of explain how we got here today, and then we're going to turn it over to the board, and I think they're going to have some questions for you, and at some point, they're going to come up with a decision on what they want to do. Whatever they come up with as a decision, you can either agree or disagree with. If you agree with it, we go forth with whatever the board has asked us to do. If you disagree, then it opens up an opportunity for you to kind of either say, never mind, walk away, or to request a full hearing before the full board at a later date. These are 3 pages. Each of you keep 3 pages.
Can I ask, what is the difference between today and a full hearing?
In a full hearing, yes. In a full hearing, we would have a hearing officer, a court reporter. We would swear everyone in as witnesses, and it is a more formal procedure as if you're going to court. A full hearing opens up that if you disagree with the decision of the board at a full hearing, it then opens up legal procedures for a legal appeal with circuit court is, I believe, how that goes.
Okay. Thank you.
What did I miss?
Thank you.
Realizing you haven't sat in that chair before, if you have any other questions during this process, by all means, wave your hands, raise your hand, get our attention, and ask any questions you have that we'll try our best to help answer them.
Thank you.
So Dr. Smith had a hearing scheduled on October 9th, 2024. We held that hearing in absentia. She did not appear at the hearing. 2 hours before the hearing, she emailed Dr. Kirtley and said she couldn't make it. In that email, she admitted that she, and I guess her son, manipulated her CPE monitoring activity transcript when she gave it to Dr. McCready as part of the audit. The board found all the allegations in that October 9th hearing true and correct and proven. And you all suspended her license indefinitely. You ordered her to pay a $5,000 disciplinary fine and to complete 24 hours of live continuing education, and then come in front of the board again to ask for reinstatement, which is what brings her here today. What you have in front of you, the paper, is the original transcript that was fraudulently submitted. It's been altered to reflect that Dr. Smith attended CE that she did not in fact do. You found in your previous hearing that that was true, and we had proven that fact to you by a preponderance of evidence. She has paid the fee and completed the additional continuing education that you all ordered. As our position on this as a staff hasn't changed, we feel like Dr. Smith intentionally submitted fraudulent documents to avoid her legal requirement to get CE, as every other pharmacist has to do. And we would object to any amendments or reinstating her license. We feel like you all got the hearing right and the facts right. And we would ask that her license remain suspended. I'm going to let also, if you would, give me a little leeway to let Dr. McCready sort of explain her investigation and how all this came about. Just as a refresher, you've already decided that and heard from her testimony, but for the benefit of Dr. Smith, who wasn't here, I'm going to let her refresh everyone's recollection as well.
In the packet from the original hearing, there's a document that is a certification that Dr. Smith signed that said, this is to certify that the attached documents are proof that I've obtained at least 30 hours of continuing education consistent with board requirements during the 2022-2023 biennium. She signed that. She certified that she had attended these courses. I spoke with her on the telephone and she said she attended the course with her boss. I called her boss. He said she did not attend the course with him. When I looked at the CPE monitor, if you notice the date under CPE activity date range, which is right here, if you look closely, you can tell that the date has been altered. That last two on the date 1/1/2022 was altered from a 2021. If you look at the very first sentence in the statement from CPE monitor, it says recorded CPE activity for the period of 1/1/2021 to 12/31 of 2023. The actual period was 2022 and 2023. So what she basically did was take her document from the 2021, 2022, and 2023 period, change that 2021 to a 2022. She took, and then, which allows the hours on the very third, on the page number 5 of 6. And if you look at the courses here that she shows she attended HP Fall Seminar, she's got 2022 changed here, here, and here. But if you look at the NABP activity number, they show they were 2021. It says 2021 192 LO1P. That 2021 or that 21 indicates that this course was live in 21. So she could not have attended this course in 22. When we called her, she said that her kids might have gotten on her computer and altered some documents. She had no idea how this happened. And she maintained that through all the time that I spoke with her. When I called her after the hearing, she said she didn't need her license to do her job. That's all I have to, and it is our contention that she said she didn't need it and we don't think she should have.
Along the same line of what you were just talking about, is it also true that on page 6 of 6, that that one too also looks to have been altered, but it was actually a 2020?
That one was also altered. Yes, it is.
And again, you all found all of this evidence and reviewed it before and found it all to be true. I don't want to retry this. That time has passed, but I do want you to make an informed decision when you decide whether or not to reinstate her license. So just a refresher.
Could I ask where we are procedurally? It looks like we took a license away. What are we doing here today?
So in the order, you did suspend her license indefinitely. But you said that she should do 24 hours of live education and pay a $5,000 fine. And you said if she wants to be reinstated, that she could come in front of the board. So that's what she is here to do today.
You said she could come and.
Request to be reinstated. I'm
and there was
sorry.
No time limit on that?
It does not have a time limit on that.
Thank you.
So this is the fraudulent that has been passed out, but where is the evidence that
It's in your tablet. She has a,
there's about 55 pages on here? Can you?
So, so you have, the first page is her letter telling her to be here and my email. And the second, so the third, fourth, and fifth page is her CPE monitoring activity covering the period, showing that she made up her hours per the board order.
And I assume we've scrutinized this to some degree to make sure that it too hasn't been fraudulently.
Yes.
I guess staff's concern is that all of this was done fraudulently. It was done with her. I mean, she did it intentionally. And then the hearing was so important, she didn't even let us know till 2 hours before we were going to have it, that she wasn't even going to attend. And I think that's a complete slap in the face to the board.
So to be clear, this story has changed from I had no idea my son was doing this to you did know and then you just lied that you knew. Am I hearing that correctly?
No, when they first called me, I did not know what had happened. I had downloaded this report. I never thought about any of that. It was actually a second call with Brenda that I had where she said, did anybody have access to your computer? And that is when I actually started piecing that puzzle together, what had happened, which I can tell you what happened if you're interested.
Well, sure, yes.
I was working at the bar and at home, I work remotely. And, my kid come in and he needed to sign, an Adobe or a PDF document. And I told him I didn't know how to do that unless somebody had sent it to you with a signature. He was telling me all kinds of things he could do with a PDF. That wasn't true. He could do all kinds of things with a PDF. In 5 minutes, he had my computer, had pulled that document that I had uploaded. He made multiple changes throughout that. I even kind of joked and said, yeah, if you can change that, I'll believe anything. I had not looked at it and not studied it. I only looked long enough to see that he was making those changes. I told him to delete it multiple times. And when
You did upload this document yourself, correct?
yes, but I had downloaded it previously. So I asked him to delete it, which he told me he did. And when I sent that document, like, I think it was 3 weeks later to her, I just grabbed the document that I downloaded, skimmed it really fast and uploaded it.
So when she checked with you,
Then they called me out of the blue, like 4 weeks after that. I don't know timeframes. I'm
Sure,
totally
that's fine.
guessing. And yes, they were saying there's things altered on here. And I'm like, I did not make any alterations. And I maintained that through that whole call. I called Brenda back to ask her questions. And she was the one that said, has anyone had access to your computer? And when she said that, that is what prompted me to kind of remember. I didn't remember because it was so fleeting and nothing to me. And I did email him back and say, this is what happened. I was almost afraid to because I feel like anything I say at this point is going to be looked at like a lie, but I had no intention of deceiving this board. I should have never let my son do that. It was just, I just never meant for any of this to happen.
and what has changed in that you didn't need your license to do your job and now
Well,
you
I
do?
was under the impression that since I work in IT, and that's why I said that is because I don't verify prescriptions or enter prescriptions or count pills or supervise technicians. I work remotely from home in an IT department, building computer systems. And so I don't use it in that way.
Can I ask Brenda something? I'm sorry.
That's right.
So why do we check everybody's CE, but why in this particular case did this come up that we needed her to send something that?
Well, because when I was auditing, I realized that this one had been altered. When I go through every one of these.
Right.
And we audited 780, 800 people this year. And I went through every one of these and I looked at this and said, well, that too is all altered. And then as I realized that, I started looking into more things. And I will go back and say she did certify, knowing she didn't have her hours, that she had her hours. So even if she says, I didn't mean for this to get to the board, she certified that she had her hours, knowing she did not have her hours.
How many do we think she really had that wasn't altered?
It was her live hours that she altered. It was all 12 of her live hours, 7, 8, 12 and a half, 13 and a half hours were altered. And as I said, when I called her, she said she attended this conference with her
Right.
boss.
There's also so if you're in IT, that's presumably a relatively technologically savvy field. So there is a disconnect there between, I had no idea that this document was changed and you do IT all day. That's a hard one for me to.
Is the CE that is on pages 3 and 4, is that supposed to represent a makeup?
Yes.
Because I thought we said that we expected 24 hours. This is only 17. And whatever,
Hold on, let me see.
I don't know that was. there's anything on it, it could have been blank.
We did count her hours. We did verify.
Let's pull it up another way.
Okay, cool.
Ashley has another copy.
How old was this child that did this?
He's 20.
So you let him have access to your pharmacy documents?
Well, it was my computer. He got on my computer and I had just downloaded this. So yeah, I mean, he just pulled it up and just started. I think he was just trying to show me that you could alter a PDF. And I am IT, but it doesn't make me know all things IT. I truly thought that was the whole premise behind a PDF, is that you couldn't alter it. I did not know that you could alter a PDF like that. I didn't even know you could sign it unless somebody sent it to you that way. And the reason I was going to try to make it, but I was in Springfield getting cleared for I had to have a hip replacement surgery. And they took so long that by the time I realized I was not going to make it from Springfield to Little Rock, I sent in emails. So I knew.
Yeah, but how, my question is, how does the conversation even come up to alter these documents? How did that even start?
He come in saying that he needed to sign some kind of document for school. And I told him, I did not think you could sign a PDF unless it had come to you. He pulled up what document he needed. I said, I don't know how to do that unless they send it to you to sign. I don't know how to sign it. And he said, oh, you can you can alter any PDF. That's how the conversation started. You can alter any kind of PDF.
Why would you search this date range if you didn't have an intention of changing the dates? Because there's really no purpose in knowing how many you got in 4 years or 3 years or whatever it was.
I can't answer why I searched that. I have about 5 different licenses and I will tell you, I had about over 100 hours of CE. It wasn't that I was not trying to do CE. I just did not have the live, which I'm not making excuses or littling by any means, but the years, they all stagger in different years. Some's in June, some's in December. So I actually had to clarify. I think I even said on that paper, I think these are the right years. So.
But how is it that it went from your son comes in and he needs to sign it and he's not sure, you didn't know how you could edit a PDF. So you're talking about his document.
Right.
So how did it then all of a sudden become that you edited your document and it just so happened that it was conveniently edited such that your live hours appeared to be appropriate when they're not?
All I know is he went and set exactly where my computer was. He had that pulled up. I mean, it was literally in a frame of 5 minutes. That's literally how long that took.
Okay, but it's a simple question, really. So your son comes in and he's talking about editing a PDF that he has particular interest in. And within 5 minutes or less, using your words that you just said, now your PDF related to CE that doesn't cut the mustard has now been edited and turned out to be what was turned in.
I don't know why he did that, sir.
And what would your paper have said if you turned in what you really did? 12 hours short?
It would have had no live, yeah.
I'm not saying what I'm about to say to cut anybody off. So if anybody wants to continue with this discussion, please feel free to do so. But I, for one, do not have any inclination to act on this matter today. And I suggest we table it, leave things the way they stand.
Any other discussion?
I am in agreement. This is all nonsense. You don't be, you're not looking at your son's information. And all of a sudden, you're in CPE Monitor. You have to sign in to CPE Monitor. And only you have the information to sign into CPA Monitor. And you're saying that your son got into this information and made these changes?
I said I downloaded that info. I had already downloaded the sheet. I had downloaded it. That's one of the last few things I did before he come in.
Well, why didn't you close this out?
I did, but when he did whatever, I don't know if he opened that and it prompted him to open a PDF document. I don't know I wasn't sitting there when that happened.
But I think I imagine is that he sat down, he logged into some kind of AI something, and it prompted him to pull in a PDF.
Okay, no, NABP has all kind of firewalls around their information, so you don't get this information there unless you deliberately log into the CPA Monitor program to retrieve this information.
I did do that. I downloaded from NABP's the CPE Monitor. I downloaded it to my computer. You can do that as a PDF.
She's saying she ran the dates 1/1 of 21 to 12/31/23, which is the wrong set of dates for us. And the only thing it caught in 21 was all the live hours, which were later altered. And that if you save it from CP Monitor on your computer, it will save it as a PDF. And that's why the PDF would be on her computer. But after that, I mean, we know it was altered.
Right.
Well, let's just say if you accidentally sent this form in, you still signed a piece of paper that said you did 30 and you knew you didn't do the live. So where does that come into
Honestly,
play?
if I could address a couple of things. Here's what happened here's where my whole life derailed. When I opened the pharmacy, I opened a cafe and I got the blur, honest to God. I went to work at Baxter Regional. I immediately went to that conference in the Arkansas Pharmacists Association. I went to that conference with my boss. I was so burnt out. I actually took some FMLA just to kind of get my head back right and just to reevaluate life and kind of get back online. I did that. And this is when this overlapped, this period of time. I don't even remember. I mean, I really thought I had attended that in the previous year. I mean, like, I knew I had over 100 hours of CE. I felt confident that I had CE.
I just want to make sure I'm looking at this sheet correctly, okay? I'm looking at pages 1, 2, and 3. And I'm seeing on page 1, seeing 6 activities that appear to have been actually from 2020. Is that what?
The first page is 2023.
Well, except look at the year.
Okay.
Oh,
I can clarify that because some home study courses will have multiple years of approval, whereas most live courses, it corresponds with the specific year it was delivered.
Okay. So I just want to make sure I'm looking at this right. The activity date is the date that you completed the CE. Is that correct? The far right-hand column is the number of hours that was awarded for that particular activity. On pages 1, 2, and 3, I'm seeing 56.25 hours of home CE that was done over the course of 3 days. Three individual days, 222, 221, and 220. So I'm gonna ask you this question. Are you testifying that over the course of 3 days?
Yes.
You did almost 60 hours of
I
CE?
did, yeah.
Okay.
Some of them I didn't take the test for until I was completing it was a power pack.
So that was in February, which is nowhere close to the end of a biennium, whether it ends in 23 or 24
That was probably for another state that I was.
that you were doing. So they don't end on the other states don't all end on the end of the year.
No, Kansas does June 30th.
Okay.
Texas,
Some do birthday.
some do October.
Okay.
And Dr. Jolly, well, we have seen the past where people would get a massive amount of CE from an online vendor like this. Sometimes those vendors, you just have a claim form or you have to answer the final test. And we have seen issues, and I'm not saying that Dr. Smith did this, but we've seen issues where it was very obvious that if I get your certificates, it had all the test answers on it.
I've just never seen anybody complete almost 20 hours of CE per day for 3 days. That
Some
only
of it
leaves
I
you
had-
4 hours to sleep.
Some of it I had already studied and marked my answers. And so when I went through, some of them I did do that day, like read through.
Okay.
And then I just completed all my.
Okay, that's why I'm asking, because
Can I
just looking
just-
at this on
Can
paper,
I
this
make one
doesn't
more
work.
comment? I just think it's important for you to know that when you log into CPE Monitor, you can easily see that the board has there's three fields. One of them is the Board of Pharmacies and one is like for customers, and I don't know what the other one's for, but I am not a genius and I'm not a deviant person, but I think it's obvious to most people that the boards of pharmacy can get in there and look at that. And so I just would have never, first of all, I would have never lied to the board. I've been a pharmacist since 2007 and I've never been in trouble. But I would have never tried to doctor something that I knew the board could literally just log in 5 minutes and look at it and know immediately that I was lying. I would have done first of all, I would have just taken the hit. I would have just told I am missing these hours. But secondly, I would have, if I was going to do something, it certainly wouldn't be on CPE Monitor where I know the Board of Pharmacy can log in and look in 5 minutes and know that I'm lying. And that's just too easy to see that it's a lie. It's too easy to look and see that.
So it's the last 4 there that appear to be.
And I will add this, if you look at page 48 of the, on the tablet, there's a document there that I pulled from CPE Monitor that shows she logged in on 4/12 of 2024 at 12:50 PM, right after lunch. And that this document was modified at 1:01 PM, not that night. It was modified during the day on 4/12 of 2024.
I could make a procedural inquiry to council here. Do I understand correctly that if we grant this request for reinstatement, the license gets reinstated today?
Correct, yes.
And if we deny it, then she gets to request a hearing and go through appellate process and so forth, right?
Well, she could request, so this is an informal hearing. We don't have a hearing officer here today. So it would be another hearing in front of the board members if you denied her request. Her time to appeal the findings you've made that this happened is gone.
So what would happen if we followed my suggestion of merely tabling this, whatever we're doing today?
I mean, there's nothing that could stop her from coming back in and asking for reinstatement at a later date. And if she didn't agree with your decision, yes, you could have a full board hearing at a later date as well. But it would uphold
Well-
the original order essentially.
Procedurally, I think to wrap it up is procedurally, the decision you make today, whatever it is, if you did not meet an agreement today, I think the staff would take it that if there's another request to come before the board, we would schedule it as a formal hearing next time.
Okay. So is this an informal?
Yes.
It's informal, yes.
Well,
It's a request for reinstatement.
again, I'll express my personal opinion on this. I think if we're going to have a hearing, let's have a hearing. I don't want to waste any more of my time arguing about this on an informal basis.
Well, it wouldn't be a hearing on the facts. So you've
Yes.
already decided the facts. You found that she fraudulently submitted this. You found the allegations and the order is in the board tablet. So the only thing we would have a hearing on is what we're talking about today is whether or not to reinstate her.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm saying if we've got to do it, let's do it. We're just wasting time arguing about this today.
Except
Unless we're going to approve the license.
if we gave an answer, then it would be official that it would need to go to a hearing, a full hearing, right? I mean, rather than just doing nothing. If we did nothing.
If you did nothing, then the previous order would stand. If she wanted to come back again and request to reinstate, next time we'd put it on for a formal hearing.
Y'all would just do it.
Yeah.
So at what point was a directive given that she was to get twice the number of live hours?
That was the board's decision at the hearing in October.
Okay.
And pay a
And
fine.
generally, we give how long to allow that to happen?
We gave till December, I believe.
You gave her, I believe, until yeah, December 15th was the deadline for the fine. And I guess the 24 hours of live CE was required if she was going to come back and ask for reinstatement.
So both of those met?
Right.
I'm sorry.
Both of those have been met, yes.
Done both.
We would not have brought her in here had they not been.
So the $5,000 fine has been paid?
Yes.
And all of the live CE, we can't see it all, but it's all been met.
Well, I think she emailed me and it was just one side, but Dr. McCready pulled up her
Yeah.
CPE monitor and reviewed it herself. And again, she's done it. We wouldn't bring her in here if she hadn't have done those two things.
So basically, whether we believe her or not, that's one issue, but the other issue is just, do we have any desire to give her license back or not?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I mean, whether or not you believed her, we've already decided in October hearing. She didn't appear, but we did it in her absence. And so now it's just a matter of whether or not you want to reinstate.
I think somebody asked you earlier, I don't remember what your answer was, I'm sorry. But I think you'd stated before that you didn't need the license because you worked in IT.
Yes.
Why the change of
Why do I want my license reinstated?
something changed with your, again, I'm just basing it on what you told board staff before.
Sure. Two things. My job did actually come back and request that they have continued my employment, but they've asked me to get my license back, number one. Secondly, my very first job out of high school was a pharmacy tech, and that's all I've ever done in my whole life. And I know that this is a huge failure for me, and I apologize and I take full responsibility. And I want to be able to serve the patients in my home state. That's important to me.
And you still stand by your testimony that you didn't intentionally alter this
I
document?
didn't, yes, I never meant to deceive this board.
And staff takes issue with that. It's manipulated with the correct, just the right number of year to make it pass through Dr. McCrady's inspection. And we feel like that she assumed Dr. McCrady would overlook that, since I guess she has 700 to do and she didn't. And she was trying to get one past us, and that's our position, that she should remain suspended.
I don't think there's any way her son would have known to put those dates exactly like they were put in there without some.
Instruction.
And separate from that, irrespective of whether it was intended to submit an edited document or not, she knew she didn't have the live CE and she signed off on a certification that she had done it anyway.
Yes.
So that is different, but
It's a
still evidence.
misrepresentation, yes.
We have a couple of different thoughts here, I guess. One, go ahead, Harold.
Is anybody in favor of granting the license today?
I'll say if nobody's in favor of doing it today, I think that, to me, this doesn't rise to the level of never being able to practice as a pharmacist again in the state of Arkansas. And so if the board's not willing to grant it today, I think we need to give a timeline at least of when we would consider that to come back. She's met the requirements that we asked her to appear before us again. If there's a timeline that you have to sit out, then I think we should give that, or at a point when we will reconsider if we won't do it today.
Do you want to add a date and make that a motion?
No, I mean, I'm reading that the board here is saying that not today, so I'd be interested to hear what everybody else has to say if it's not today.
This is almost 7, 8
It's October.
Is a year enough, 2 years enough?
I mean, it's a little bit different because, most of the time, if a pharmacist is in a job where they have to be a pharmacist, if they lose their license, they lose their job or they don't have a paycheck. But I do appreciate, what Dr. Boone is saying is this a not today or a not ever is the question. You phrased it, I think, cleaner than I might have. But if it's a not today, but not a not ever, then I think you're trying to figure out what's the timeline you guys are thinking of.
I guess I don't understand the purpose of the timeline from where I'm coming from. And here's where I'm coming from with that. Part of the decision-making process, I feel like as a board member, is determining whether something was more likely or not to have occurred. Okay. I cannot in my mind rationalize that what she claims is her story is more likely to have occurred than intentionally knowing that the document, there's just too many, it just logically doesn't make sense that would be the actual story. So if I take that stance and she continues with her opinion and comes back in 3 years, what has changed? So what is the purpose of giving the timeline if the decision-making around whether to re-grant the license doesn't really change? So to me, there's no difference in giving the license today versus asking her to come back in 2 years, because I don't know what changes in 2 years. Or I'm having a hard time putting that together. So I'm throwing that out there for y'all's opinions too, because I want your feedback.
I think it's the amount of time, like
Out of practice,
putting it a different way is there an amount of time that with what you see today, if you went, what, if I just had to make a outright decision today based on everything I believe right now, here's how long I would hold this person out of their license. And it's a different decision, because yours may be, as long as this is the discussion that continues to happen, I'm never going to vote for it. And we've had that before. I know, Dr. Newsom and I have seen that for sure. Sometimes with this specific situation, I'm never going to vote for that. We've had board members even say that.
But here's my thought. That from a timeline, if we're going to deal with it, let's deal with it. And then the next time to deal with it at a formal hearing would be October. The difference between doing it today and doing it at a formal hearing is sworn testimony.
That's true.
So that's the difference. It's today, it's just, here's what you got to say.
She's had her opportunity. She had her due process. She had her hearing on October 9th. She chose not to come. She's not entitled to a new hearing. So I would object to that process, because if she wanted to come argue it, we were here waiting for her on October 9th. She sent Dr. Curley an email 2 hours and said she wasn't coming. That's the first time any of us heard anything about, oh, my kid did this. So that she thumbed her nose at her opportunity to come in here and testify already.
We're not arguing at a formal hearing anyways. The facts have already been found.
Facts have been found, so we can't argue anything about whether or not this happened. But the facts, you already found that it was happening.
Right.
So issue is whether or not to reinstate. Give you the background information, and she can tell you her background information just to give you an idea whether or not you should. But, the facts haven't changed as far as our considerations are.
I think that is precisely the point I've been trying to make. It's a mistake for us to take action one way or the other today. We don't want to raise a situation where we create a right to a hearing that doesn't currently exist. And that's why I would simply table this request for reinstatement.
But she can, if I understood what Harold said, she can send in and ask for reinstatement. Y'all will give her a hearing anyway? I mean.
Because we did put that as part of that's where I'm confused.
Yeah, that's because it's in the order. That is why we did it this way. So you gave her three conditions, really. 1, pay the fine. 2, make up the CE. And 3, she had to come back in here if she wanted to get reinstated.
Didn't set a time certain.
Yeah. Didn't set a time certain. Now, at that point, You could now if you wanted to.
And typically, when you would come back, you would show like, I was suspended because of a drug problem and I've gone through drug treatment and I've been in our program for years and I've turned my life around. I'm not hearing anything about that. I'm hearing the arguments about the guilt or innocence that was decided in the original hearing. That's why there's nothing for us to hear or do today is what I'm saying. And it's a mistake for us to act on something that we're not hearing.
Well, but I think we gave her some conditions last time, right?
Well, I think the
I think that's
implication,
why she's back.
yeah, but the implication is when you come back showing that something has changed. And I don't hear any of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was,
So, there's no reason for us to be taking any action because she hasn't come back having satisfied the third condition. Or even given us anything to consider that's a change. And maybe what we say is we table it and if she can come back with some substantial change that would justify coming back, we'll consider it at that point.
I guess I would disagree just slightly. She did pay the $5,000 fine and get the 24 hours of CD. So she did follow up on 2 things that we asked her to do, so.
And the part that you're asking, I mean, it's historical, so I'm not sure, we can't go back and change history. I also agree with Dr. Boone that I don't know that this rises to the level that you never get your license back ever again. The fact that she has to go through this process, sin has consequence. And so,
Well, presumably, when she comes back, she has to do something to satisfy the board that she should get a license back. And I haven't heard anything that justifies that other than re-arguing the issues that were already decided initially.
I think a $5,000 fine is.
I mean, she was told to pay a fine, she paid the fine. She was told to get live CE sufficient, she's done that. And then she was told to come back. But if we're not willing to do it as informal, then it needs to be at a formal. I mean, if we have to act on that because that was in that order, then is that not something that needs to be acted upon?
Ashley will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think if she fills out a reinstatement application, we have a form in hand that says, I want to reinstate my license, then that precipitates her being able to have an appearance before the board, a hearing before the board. Although you can't rehash what happened, you still have the documents that show that when we have somebody that comes in and says, I want a pharmacy license, we look at their back history, their back disciplinary action. So you could still discuss that there's disciplinary action that's taken place, but you can't rehash it. As far as the board's concerned, this happened, that you guys found the charges and the allegations, everything true. So as far as the board is concerned, this happened just like it was presented. So at that point, if she did a reinstatement application, staff would not approve that. It would have to come before the board. And that could be scheduled as a hearing, but that's not a right to a hearing on the previous information. That's the right to a hearing on reinstatement. Is that correct? If we denied it, she could come in for a reinstatement.
And if that reinstatement request came in, then we would know that we need to make this a formal hearing because we've already heard informal is not going to cut it.
And at that point, it would then be a question of, are we satisfied with her reasoning for what we found to be true? Sort of like, are we satisfied with the reasoning for a DWI or whatever it is, whenever we move past it? Is that correct?
Pretty much.
We often hear people come in and say, I did this, I made a mistake, I was wrong. We haven't heard that. We hear people say, I took that product, but I've been to treatment. I'm better, I'm sober. We haven't heard, there's been nothing, we haven't heard anything has changed, but with a reinstatement application, that opens the door for a different process because we've already done this, but it does open the door.
You could close this case out. If you took no action today, you could close this case out and allow her to apply to reinstate. If we denied it, which we probably would, then she could come in for a formal hearing. I can't guarantee you though when that would be because our October hearing date is going to be a lot. I can't guarantee when that, so I can't guarantee the next date. But yes, we would get her in if you wanted to close this case out by taking no action on it. We could do it that way.
I think it's safe to say that we're all confused on, because of her absence at the original trial, there's just a lot of confusion. So we don't want to make a rash decision that is not, that's too permanent, but we also don't have enough information to make a decision on reinstatement since we have not seen a change from the original decision that we made. So I guess,
You want to make that a motion, Harold?
Well, who's to say it's gonna be any different in 2 months or 4 months?
Let's get it.
Yeah.
Put a date on it.
Because if she comes
well, I
back,
think that
if
Like
she
you
applies
said,
in October,
If she
well,
applies-
but I think it's time to start a new process is what
if she does a reinstatement application and it's denied, then she can appeal that and that starts a process and a date wise.
and that's a whole new deal.
That's
Yeah.
all.
I think that's what needs to happen.
but then when she walks in trying to get a license back, obviously this is gonna be discussed,
It'll be
so.
discussed. It's part of
what-
the
And we don't
disciplinary
see
history.
anything different in October or February than we saw today.
But you have a timeline.
And she's now aware of what needs to be shown.
And it would be a formal hearing. It wouldn't be us sitting around at the table just talking about it. It'll all be recorded. Because to me, this is a very, very serious matter. When you start manipulating information on a CPA monitor. Very, very serious. No matter who did it or how it was done. And where's the son? If he did this stuff, why is he not here? So in a hearing, you would have to come in, you would have to take an oath and have to testify. And that's what I would like to see.
Well, we've talked about a lot of things and we've gone different directions. And so I think we maybe just pick a place to start. Let's start with the last discussion, which sort of seemed to bring this to a point. Dr. Davenport, would you like to make a motion on that? And is there a second?
I would make a motion to close out this case with the option for her starting a new case with an application for
Okay,
reinstatement.
so it's a two-part motion. So the first part would be to close out the current case. And the second is recognizing that the option is open for her to reapply for reinstatement. And if that happens, then the natural process will occur.
And I will second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this?
Reinstated at that time, or are we just kicking the can down the road to say no at that point? I mean,
I think we're giving her
It's
the
something-
opportunity
Well,
to
yeah,
show
yeah.
that she has made. That's what we're
What can
missing
she
today.
do to show that she made a change?
She could bring her son in,
Right.
or she could,
Well, her son can just say, yeah, I did it.
I-
I'm not sure.
I don't know, but she now knows what we're expecting for her to show change, whether it's ethical or otherwise. And then I think that the formality is probably important if we're gonna, I don't feel comfortable making a permanent decision today, but I also don't feel comfortable reinstating her license given the lack of sufficient evidence to do so.
I think we're making a terrible mistake. We do not want to reopen the matter that's already been decided. If something has changed between the action the board took before and whenever we have a hearing or whatever we do, that's fine, but we don't want to open the door to having more evidence come in about what happened at the time these things were submitted. That would be a terrible mistake. I think we need, whatever we do, we need to make it clear that if there's going to be a hearing, it's got to show, it's, again, use my example of a pharmacist that's had a drug problem. He doesn't come in and say, I didn't have a drug problem, or you didn't understand the evidence that I had a drug problem, right? He comes in and says, these are the things that have happened since then that I've done to fix it. That's what it's got to be limited to.
Thank you.
It would seem to me that the hearing officer would have the discretion to determine what evidence comes in at that hearing and what evidence does not. And what is it exactly that's being decided?
Maybe so, but I don't think we ought to open the door to that, which is what we're about to do. That's why I'm fussing
If we're
about this.
closing out this case and only allowing for a new case to be
Well,
open.
If we're leaving the implication, we need to say specifically that we're not leaving any implication that we will go back and rehear the facts that have already been decided in this case. We need to be expressly clear on that.
I agree, Harold. I mean, I agree with you.
We don't
I'm looking at the conclusions of law. So we said it was unprofessional conduct. Said it was fraud, deceit, misrepresentation. The respondent was ordered to pay a $5,000 fine, do no later than the 15th of 24 December, and complete 24 hours and come back to the board to request reinstatement. So she met two of those that she was ordered by the board. When she comes back, what is it that we're going to hear?
That there's been some change of circumstances that would justify her having a license that would move the board to take the final step of reinstating the action.
Okay. Wanted to understand what
Does that make sense to everybody?
No, it's not a clear defined thing.
I mean,
You think
What's
something
an
that's
example
changed.
of
Yeah,
something?
what-
What's an example?
Is it a course you want her to take? Is there a number of CE? Is it a time period?
Is it owning that this, I mean, she's sticking with this story that I'm saying I don't believe. I don't know if you all believe it
Well-
too, but she's not really taking ownership, in my opinion. If that's what you're looking for
Yeah.
at the next hearing, is for her to say, you got me, I messed up, I'm sorry, this won't happen again. We didn't hear that today.
If I don't see some recognition that what was essentially confessed to by default was true, I don't want to start hearing excuses that were defaulted out. That's all I'm saying.
And that does fit with if you go with the drug analogy where, the first time they come in, they are denying, and then they come back and say, okay, I finally reached that point where I'm taking ownership. You do see that. So I agree.
All right, so we have a pending motion with a second on the floor. Is there any further discussion?
Does it need to be amended though to include something?
Need a motion, Harold.
Oh, yeah. That's true.
Do
Do we
need
just
a
drop
motion?
this?
I think this is an informal. Yeah, this is an informal hearing. I just say that as an informal action, we don't see any reason for us to take any action to reinstate. But at whatever time she deems appropriate, she's eligible to apply and show any information that's happened since the termination that would justify the granting of a new license.
And that doesn't
Makes
seem to be
sense.
any different from what the current pending motion and second is.
Oh, yeah, it's very different.
How is it different? It was a two-part motion. One was to close out this case. But then it's put to rest. And the second is she has the option whether we give it to her or not. She can always come back and reapply.
We'll probably just leave that part out of the.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I'll buy that, but I think we ought to have an express stipulation that if she reapplies, it will be on the basis of showing things that have changed since the original suspension.
If we don't make a motion at all, she can just do it, right? Like it's just within her rights.
Okay, let me
So
just
let's maybe
withdraw. Let's withdraw.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll withdraw my second. You're
I
gonna-
withdraw my motion.
Okay, we got that. Thank you.
Well,
Then I'll
the
make
second part of
a motion, we take no action.
and does that put this matter to rest? This case? Yeah.
For this case, if you took no action, if that's your decision, we close it out.
So do we need a motion to take no action or we just take no action?
How do you want it in the minutes?
Yeah.
Did, he had a motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Right here.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there, and let's be clear what that motion is. We're simply
Take no action.
taking no action and this matter will be closed. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
Okay, so what we'll reduce it to writing and send you a copy of it as well. We'll have Ms. Bales do that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Christian did.
We did a comfort break.
Yes, we'd like to take a comfort break.
Okay. So, Mr. President, are you ready to head back? All right, guys, we're back live on our feed for Zoom, YouTube, everything else. If you guys want to introduce yourselves just real quick and tell us who you're with, and then I'll tell you about kind of who you're talking to and just kind of how our procedure works today. Hey, guys, we're back. Go ahead.
I'm Jeff Alsberg with QIC Pharmacy.
Kevin Rossler with QIC Pharmacy.
Okay, guys, I'm John Kirtley. I'm the Director of the Board of Pharmacy. On this side of the table, you have certain different staff members here at the board offices. Myself, Dr. Brenda McCready, who is our Assistant Director, Miss Ashley Vales, who's our Legal Counsel. On the other side, these are all of our 8 pharmacy board members with their name tags out in front of them. And I'll tell you a little bit procedurally here today. You're here to meet with us. You have an out-of-state pharmacy application that staff was not able to approve. So there are a few specific points I know that we'll want to discuss with the board. That at some point they're probably going to have some questions for you as well, and then they'll come to some decision at some point. It could be to approve the application, deny the application, say it's approvable if the following conditions are met, or we don't know exactly what they're going to say until they come up with it. Whatever they come up with, you can agree or disagree with. If you agree with it, we go forth with whatever it is they've asked us to do. If you disagree, it's an opportunity to basically request a hearing before the board at a later date. So I always ask 2 things. Do you know why you're here today? Did you got an application? Yes. Yes. Do you have any questions about how this works? Realizing you've never sat in those seats, and at some point, if there's something you want to ask us or try to get some clarification on, by all means, like raise your hand, wave your hands, get our attention. We'll try to help answer any questions that you have. Sure.
You brought a third team member also.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Do you need her up here?
If she wants to testify, we can grab her a chair. She can pull one up. If she wants to sit behind you and not be at that table, that's fine with us as well.
I'm just here if they need me.
Okay. Well, we oftentimes pull up the whole batting list. And let us know who you are as well.
Okay.
My name is Christy Urash. I'm the
Okay.
Director of Community Development, and I do the marketing
Okay.
and consultant pharmacies, or work with the consultant pharmacist.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you, Christy. With all that, I'm going to turn it over to our staff just for a brief overview of a couple of concerns we had with this application, and then we'll dive in.
So we received the application. We received the application in May. When the application came to me, I reviewed it, had some questions for Jeff about pharmacy services. They put in the application that they were going to be handling memory care, long-term care, assisted living, that type of thing. And standard questions are, how do you handle patient freedom of choice? How are you going to handle emergency services, et cetera? And I explained to them what we consider, the board has always considered the timeline for emergency services to be about 2 hours, that if you have an emergency in the facility, then you've got that time frame to be able to get those prescriptions to those patients. We talked about them looking for a 24-hour pharmacy. They sent me some information that they were trying to locate somebody that could handle those services for them. And as it progressed, I went to Dr. Kirtley and we just decided that it would be best to have them come before the board, talk through all these issues and get all that resolved. Okay.
And was there, because I think you guys are in Mansfield, Texas.
Correct.
Is that correct? How far is that from like Texarkana for us?
Texarkana.
I think that's about 3.5 hours.
I mean, that's the closest city in Arkansas you generally would get to. So it's 3
It's about
hours.
5.5 hours to here, so.
Yeah, so it's like 3.5 hours from the border.
Yeah.
Most of the work is generally for like institutionalized assisted living, memory care.
Assisted living and memory care.
Okay.
And we did discuss that with Brenda and made that clear. We didn't do any skilled nursing.
Okay, so no emergency kits, which
Correct.
it's a different issue because you probably know Texas doesn't let anyone send kits into our state or any other state from any other state. So we don't let generally Texas pharmacies send it to us. In your Texas facilities, do you have to do emergency care for those institutionalized patients?
We provide emergency services, for antibiotics and pain medicine.
Yeah.
We have after hours call
Okay.
lines that we answered. around the
And
clock.
I'm gonna go back real quick, John, just to the application and the information that went back and forth. I have an email here that says we are located in Texas and want to expand our services for long-term care into Arkansas for assisted living, memory care, group homes, and nursing homes. So the email and the application both have nursing homes listed, and that's one of the reasons that my questions about the emergency kits and that type of thing came up.
Sure.
So
But you and I, when we talked,
We didn't
I
talk about
clarified that. We didn't do.
So no nursing homes, no emergency kits. In Texas, at least, I'm not completely familiar. I know they have like 20-something different permit types. But when you have emergency care, do you have a timeline of responsiveness to get the meds there?
I believe it's 24 hours.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is far different than ours.
But for the most part, I mean, we do it within like 4 hours. So,
Yeah.
I mean, and sometimes it's, you know, so it's within a reasonable amount. So, I mean, you know, we have after-hour pharmacies that we call, that we have contracts with, that we can get stuff serviced and they're within an hour, 2 hours, you know? So,
Yeah. And part of this is, you know, we have, Dr. McCray and I at least, you know, we've had several, you know, new pharmacies engaging, or we've even had an instance where pharmacies like closed here and moved to other states. If you had a location within 2 hours of the facility, it's pretty easy for us to see how you could get, you know, very quick responsive service to them. But when you're that far away, it's very difficult for us to do that. So when we look at assisted living, especially like memory care, you know, you're dealing with patients that do not have the ability to leave of their own free will. You know, some assisted livings, they can have a car outside and go to lunch if they want to, and that's a little bit different issue. But when the patients don't have that ability, we consider them to be institutionalized and have a requirement to have, you know, service. If there is, sometimes there are things that, you know, they need an IV infusion that takes an hour to make, and we understand that you can't spend an hour to make it and also have it there in an hour, or if it takes you 20 minutes to prep the room and then to make the IV and everything, and then 30 minutes away, like that might be an exception. But otherwise, generally, this board has always lent itself that emergency services, they're looking at about a 2-hour window. So do you guys have any specific areas or plans of how you're going to satisfy that for Arkansas?
no, we would, like I said, we would look to contract with a local pharmacy on that. We wouldn't, in Texas, like in assisted livings or memory care, we wouldn't be doing IV bags and et cetera, any kind of sterile.
So if they have need for a sterile product, what do you do?
They would send them probably to the hospital. Because the nurses there can't administer that stuff. It would have to be a hospice or something like that.
It might be a little bit different than here.
Maybe.
I know, like, because if you have full, you know, skilled nursing, you have to either have the ability to prepare or a direct contract for the sterile stuff. If you're
Right.
not doing skilled nursing, I understand you may not have like, I don't know that there's a
Right,
CMS.
which we don't do skilled, we only do.
Non.
Right.
Yeah. So in Texas, do you do full nursing homes?
We don't do nursing homes at all.
Okay. So then you don't have the CMS issue on that.
It was the same here. That's non-skilled nursing. Correct?
Well, but there are different levels of assisted living that someone will, you know, this is another instance, someone will play it back on YouTube and get angry based on a misunderstanding. It's not my area of practice, even though I did do it some back in the day. You have, I think, higher and higher levels of patient need in that. And when you have some facilities like, you know, having had a couple loved ones in memory care, you know, they have some level of nursing or assistance basically throughout the day for everything, but it's not the same level as a full-blown nursing. But since they cannot leave, this board has generally said, well, that is an institutionalized patient, and therefore, you know, since they can't leave to go to the pharmacy to get what they need, what's a memory issue or a physical capability issue, you know, it's always been expected that there's emergency care to that patient. It's the same reason you can't, when we inspect pharmacies, if you're taking care of institutionalized patients, you can't say, Saturday and Sunday, I'm not on call or anything. It's like, no, you have to give 24/7,
Yeah.
365, be available, and in case of emergency, provide the service.
And in their business description, they talk about that they have routine deliveries and stat services available. And to me, a stat service is kind of an emergency service.
Yes.
There's another company we use called MedCall also. We can't get an antibiotic there fast enough. Well, essentially it's like a transfer, but we contract with another company to bill the insurance and the patient still gets the medication within an hour or two and for zero copay.
Do you guys, are you connected to like the EMR systems or interconnected?
But we can, so that question was asked too. And so
Yeah.
we interface with whatever the home has. I mean, there's not nothing we can't interface with. It's just.
Sure.
So
Well,
yes,
and-
I mean,
For Arkansas, you can't interface at all because we only allow the interface within the borders of the state, which is a little bit weird. So if you're, Christie, if you're out talking to a home in Arkansas, if they, if they say, hey, we got point click care, can you interface? And you go, oh yeah, that's great. Well, right now, at least, since that's a version of offsite order entry with a retail type permit, it's only allowed for pharmacies that are inspected by the board within the borders of Arkansas. It has to be an AR permit, not an out-of-state permit.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
Point Click Care, oh, sorry.
Yep.
Point Click Care offers skilled nursing options, which typically are not used in assisted living. Part of that is the order entry because they have meds on site. The communities that we work with do no order entry.
Okay.
We enter all of the orders for them. So there's no order entry by the communities typically.
So
If they
you're
do,
saying,
it's community only and a pharmacy that is the patient's specific pharmacy and we're not filling it. So they have the option to put in like an antibiotic that's getting filled locally, but it's not going to a pharmacy to be filled. It's not like a legitimate prescription. So it's not linked to the pharmacy to create an actual prescription.
so tell me if I misunderstood you, but you're saying the pharmacy enters in all the orders for the EMR.
Yes,
We consider that offsite order entry, and because it's not happening in the facility, it's happening in the
Okay.
pharmacy.
so we're entering it into our software and the normal daily workflow to fill the prescriptions.
You can,
The interface then sends the data to the EMR and they
Yeah.
accept the orders.
no, we don't allow that type of interface.
Okay,
If you look at, we have a very specific rule for offsite order entry, which we consider that to be part of offsite order entry, that, and the rule has been around, well, I think it was in process when I started here a little over 20 years ago.
okay.
That may change at some point
I
in the
would hope
future,
so,
but
yeah.
the current time, a retail permit, which this is a retail permit, you say it's long-term care, but that falls under our permit status for retail, in-state, out-of-state, is only approvable between Arkansas licensed pharmacies within the state.
Got a clarifying question on that. The definition of the law book for that offsite order entry, it says it's between two pharmacies. So are you saying that facility is considered a pharmacy in this case?
Whether it's a pharmacy record, and I understand there is a split hair, but then you have the argument of it's not allowed with an assisted living at all. The
Okay.
interpretation the board has had over the years is that they have allowed that to occur for the facilities, but it has to be within the state. So like a
Understood.
pharmacy in Little Rock is not supposed to be doing it for a facility in Tulsa. Just like a pharmacy in Tulsa can't do it for a facility, assisted living here in Little Rock.
you don't allow pharmacies in Arkansas to fill for other states either.
They can't do offsite. And we actually have, the board has had some brief discussions on this in the past, and it's the way it was before, our offsite rule, the way it is stated now, it allows pharmacists or technicians to be involved in aspects of that process for retail. The hospital rule is somewhat different. It is limited to pharmacists only, but they don't have to be in a permitted facility necessarily. So there is a different flexibility on the hospital side than the retail side. At some point, the board may direct rulemaking change in a similar fashion. Yeah.
So the main reason that we offer this to our customers, and I've spent the last 15 years in communities with the nurses doing card audit reviews, checking charts, MARs, things like that, is the safety and the accuracy of having a pharmacist review those orders before they're approved for the MAR. Because of so many errors that we've seen when they're keyed in by the community. And you'll see the nurse, like caregiver fatigue is one of the biggest problems in assisted living. And that's part of what our system is geared towards helping to relieve. And so I've seen so many instances when a nurse who's well-meaning has an assistant who's not a nurse and gives them the authority to enter orders into the MAR, and it's gone very badly. So whenever possible, we have wanted and encouraged that we do have the interface so that the pharmacists who are trained in senior care pharmacy are going to be able to catch errors and make sure everything's accurate. We do have communities that are not interfaced with us that enter in all of their orders themselves, and that's a corporate choice that they've made. And some that are still on paper MAR that we print out once
The
a month.
nightmare.
It's
I-
horrible.
That's what I used to have filled prescriptions or keep up with what potential needs I had patients with were paper Mars.
Yeah, so I just want to let you know too, I mean, we are able to provide for a community and give them our service without that interface. It's not a requirement or a necessity for us to provide services. But that is our hope and our goal. So I would hope that a rule would change someday just for the safety of the patients. But we are able to provide service without that interface.
Good deal. More questions?
Do you send a paper MAR with it or how do you?
Well, the MAR is generated at the facility. So my experience, and correct me if I misspeak, because it's been a few years since I was in this area of practice. Generally, we would get a list of what all the patient needs currently were. We would have to cross-reference it to see if we had valid prescriptions for it. If we did not have valid prescriptions for it, we would have to then do outreach to the prescriber, or the facility to obtain a, valid script and then send it back accordingly. So a lot of it was fax. I'm sure it's electronic fax now.
So yeah, like 5 years ago, it was probably 95% paper. Now it's 99% electronic. And so, there's really not much paper that goes back and forth. Occasionally, some of the homes that we have on the coast, we have papers going with them every month so that if they do have a power outage, they have access to something. But that we also have other means that they can log onto the portal and get access to those paper Mars and print them out somewhere else if they need to. Or if we have power, we can print them out and send them down there.
Yeah.
So
And I realize the uniqueness of our rule, but the way our rule is, like, you can't tie the two systems together.
Sure.
So, if they have a way to send you the electronic record instead of a fax, and they can put it on a spreadsheet and email it to you, or I say email as a general term, not literally, getting it via Gmail, but they can use other transfer services. You just can't have interoperability where the pharmacy is in their system and they're in your system.
Which we do have that with our web portal where they
Yeah.
can send us whatever they need. And
Who do you get the orders from for a certain assisted living facility? Is it the medical director? Is it a medical director associated with that facility?
generally it's
Is it just their individual physicians?
Generally, it's from the facility. So like, when
Correct.
whether they have a medical director or visiting physicians come by, they have them sign them on a quarterly or 6-month basis. I don't know. It's usually whatever the home's standards are, and then they send them to us. And then if there's no refills on that, we may contact the doctor for refills on their behalf prior to filling their cycle. And then if we can't get those refills, then we reach out to home, let them know, hey, these are the ones we can't get. You don't mind reaching out to the doctors.
And a lot of the electronic health records that include the EMARs in the facilities have the capability to send electronic prescriptions directly. So, or at least the way I have seen them in the past. Like if they're in the home and create the prescription, if they don't have interoperability, or in direct interchange, at the same time, it can press the button and send it as an electronic script potentially to the pharmacy. And that's not the pharmacy being in their system or vice versa. It's the same function you would have in a medical clinic with that capability.
No nursing home, so therefore emergency care.
And our main thing is, is we've had, facilities that are at distance that may not be able to provide what we would think of as traditional emergency care. Part of that is bringing them in before the board so that it's very clear through this interaction that they have to provide the service. If I have a contract with someone else and I rely on them to provide the service and they fail, it's still on me because I'm the actual, main pharmacy involved. So part of it is discussion, part of it is buyer beware what you're getting into, because we want to be sure that, that they know if it's an issue, they get to come back and sit in those chairs and it's not necessarily a friendly visit.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is like, I have 3 pharmacies. Every time we fill a prescription, we're on the hook, right? I mean, we're here to do a good job. We're here to take care of patients, and we don't market your state. Your state came to us.
Yeah,
I mean,
I get it.
We're here to service our customers and your residents.
And we've had people, and I'm not saying you guys all, we've had people that have flippantly told us they have contracts for that. And then when we look at the contract, they literally have a PBM billing contract. And we've had people come in before and say, here's a list of all the contracted pharmacies we have. And I look down the row and there'll be a board member that's an owner in a pharmacy and like, hey, you're on this list. Did you know that? And they're like, I have nothing to do with this. So, I mean, I appreciate that you guys saying you would have to identify those pharmacies and set up a contract with them versus we've had people come in before and go, I've got a contract. And I think at one point I had 2 board members that were involved in different pharmacies that were listed. I think one of them was a corporate chain pharmacy that they were a pharmacist at, and the other was an independent that the person owned, and neither one of them had any idea about this. I said, well, they're saying that you're going to take care of this for them. And the corporate person went, I can't even open it in the middle of the night. If the main store is closed, they don't give me a key to the front of the big store to get in the big store to get in the pharmacy at the back.
Sure.
So part of these discussions are, you would never believe the crazy stuff we've heard before.
Yeah, I mean, and if push came to shove, we're going to drive it ourselves there.
Yeah.
It may take a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But we're going to get it there. And, the problem sometimes too is finding that drug, even.
Yeah. And that's one of those things, if there's a drug, we've talked about this a lot with hospital, especially, there are some drugs that there's a difference in, you just don't have it and it's a drug that's readily available versus nobody on earth has this drug. We have had, you would not believe the number of complaints that I would get during COVID of, well, I've got a prescription for this and they say they can't fill it. And I'm like, here's 4 articles that this drug is on a nationwide shortage and the Board of Pharmacy can't make them get it. We can't make them obtain a drug that nobody has.
And you can't make the insurance pay for something that's
No.
equivalent.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. You can try.
So it sounds like the emergency kit is not applicable in this situation. You guys aren't going to interface with the point of care system, the EMR, and you're going to contract with the local pharmacy for emergency services.
I think those are our main 3 things and they, I think, acknowledge that they know them now.
Are you asking us to make a motion to approve, or can you all now with the information approve the application?
Yeah. And they know, there's not a bunch of 24-hour pharmacies all over the state that the other fun approach I've had is, oh, we have the contract for a 24-hour pharmacy and Uber will go pick it up for us. And I'm going, there's not a whole lot of Uber in, most towns of Arkansas either. You guys may have experienced that trying to get here today.
Well, sure. I mean, Texas is a big state.
Yeah.
Our furthest location we go is 8.5 hours from our pharmacy.
Oh, wow.
There's a whole pocket full of pharmacies there, and we're still servicing that facility faster than those guys that are right next door. We've lost accounts, and then 2 months later, they're right back with us. They're
I see
3 blocks away from the pharmacy. They can't get their scripts the next day. It doesn't make sense to me. We can overnight them and get them there next morning.
Yeah.
And they can't fill them and get them there the next day. It's beyond me.
I think it's where you focus your energy.
Right. Well, we just got a system. We got a program. We're here to fill scripts. If we can't fill them, and get them there, then we got
Yeah.
bigger problems.
So Dr. Curley, I think Dr. Richmond do you need a motion?
Yeah.
To approve based on the limitations we've discussed today? Make it, yeah, I'll make it. Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you. Thank you for your time today.
Appreciate you.
Safe travels back.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is that Nancy? You didn't have anything else? Brenda? Yeah, so I can understand. Really? Yeah. Well, your pharmacist will get to come take our test, so.
Yeah.
Well, have you already taken your law test?
Yeah.
Oh, good deal. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, guys. Oh, where'd you go? I don't even, okay, I don't even know where that is. But I didn't grow up in Little Rock, so. Kelly, do you have 4 more things for us? No? Lauren? Dale? That's basically all I've got. I'll get you guys copies of, what my presentation will be. After, we do have to have elections during this meeting for, to basically start up after this meeting. And the other thing is every year at our June meeting, so right before the beginning of the new fiscal year, we do authorization to conduct Board of Pharmacy oversight activities where we basically officially have the board vote and approve our investigative staff, myself, Dr. McCready, our other 3 pharmacists to actually perform investigative oversight activities. While it is fairly infrequent, every once in a while, someone wants proof that we've been approved by the board to do our jobs. And so when we have that, because the board has accepted it, we have the new president sign off on these sheets each year. You guys could have at it.
I mean, I think it would be, I would nominate Dr. Mack for president next year. Dr. Richmond for past president or chair?
Chairperson.
Chairperson. And Dr. Boone is, secretary.
Is it Boone or Newsom?
Is it Lenore or Clint? I thought it was Clint.
He's,
Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
got off. Okay.
the order that I have as far as, potential expirations is Dr. Jolly, Dr. Richmond, Dr. Mack, Dr. Newsom, and then it goes to Boone, Boucher.
Okay, so I nominate
it's-
Dr. Newsom for secretary vice president. Yeah, yeah.
As long as you're staying with us. What's another 30 years? I knew that would get a reaction out of it.
Need a motion?
That'd be great.
Motion.
We have a second.
Okay.
Motion and second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And then if we could have a motion to approve the authorization to conduct Board of Pharmacy oversight activities, for another year, and then we'll have Dr. Mack sign that as the incoming president.
Second.
Second, any discussion? Hearing none. Please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I believe that is all we have for today. Tomorrow morning, we will start again at 9 o'clock in the morning. I believe that tomorrow is packed with hearings. Is that correct? So we will reshuffle the table a little bit to have a hearing officer and a court reporter over here. And that way I get to sit over there and twiddle my thumbs a little bit more.
You don't have any discussion things that we could
Handle.
You know, the funny thing is, there are things that I know the board has, shared some opinions on in the past. I have a whole bunch of, I can give you an update. The board had at least two previous decisions to submit for rule changes on intern and tech ratios to combine those to a 4-to-1. Those were submitted in the fall, but it was, I think, close enough to legislative session issues happening that it didn't get through that process. Starting January 1st, if it was posted January 1st, we did not see it at the time, but there was a complete reorganization of all administrative agency rules for the state. So what I had said yesterday to Dr. Newsom when we were at Harding was, so like Rule 2 is no longer Rule 2. It's like Rule Section 160 dash, and it may be like 401. So instead of having like 12 rules with all the subsections, we have like 40 something subparts. We have it posted on our website. It's on the tablets as well for our stuff. In fact, if you want to pull it up, X Law Book. So now, because of the way that this is arranged, and you got to go way down to like, it's in the like 160, 180. It looks different and it takes up a little more space on paper. So it looks like we just expanded our law book to be like 400 pages instead of 250 pages, but it's because there's less words or fewer words and more spacing per page, the way that it is actually arranged by the state. So we do have a cross-reference to help people understand, like, this is where this used to be, this is where this is now. 99.5% of it is in the exact same order. Every once in a while, there's one thing that moves slightly just to align with something else. But overall, it was just an update, and they even deleted some extraneous information. Questions on this? You ready for a law course?
I'm trying to find it.
If you look, like I'm on page 187, it says subpart 3 pharmacist internship clerkship. So whereas that used to be in like Rule 2, that would be like 02, 04, 0006, for instance. Now it's 17, which is the area of the actual statutory code. 17 would be like medical professions, Code of Arkansas rules. And then 160, we are section 160. So in the statute, we're section 17, subsection 92. But as far as agency rules, we're 17 Code of Arkansas rules, subsection 160. And then everything after that is the citation of the subpart or the sub-subpart. So 301 is definitions, and then 302 is internship required. There's a direct correlation of the way that used to be in a different numbering system. I know. That's why I said, are you ready for law class? And we do have a cross-reference on the website, but last time this was done was about 1999. It was while we were in school. Yeah, because there used to be these little tiny law books that would like fit in your pocket almost. That like we started those in pharmacy school, and then we got to law class, and like everything looked different all of a sudden, and people were having a fit. And it used to be to where, depending on how far you go back in the Wayback Machine, like there'd be the statute and the associated rule, and the statute and the associated rule, and that was a nightmare for the way my brain works, because I think it's cleaner to say these are the statutes, these are the rules, and cite the statute from the rules to line them up, because they're not written in chronological order. But yeah, it's something.
Yeah, you're gonna need the cross-reference.
Dr. McCready,
It's
yeah.
not just us, every board, every commission, everybody in the state has had their stuff re-codified.
So, I think I was just handed a whole sign. We need to establish some October board dates, apparently. But nonetheless, so things that we had that were in process, that was one. We had another one that I just went completely blank on that we had submitted as rule changes. All of that is having to be redone. It will be done along with any rule changes we have to do based on other board feedback or issues that we know will have to change based on new statutory issues, which we're waiting on the BLR report specifically on that to proceed. I anticipate we will have several rule changes that are stacking up. And I think it will give us some opportunities to clean up some things. You know, whether there's a whole statutory change to allow 503Bs to sell to 503As, but late in the process, when it had already been through the House, went to the Senate, there was an amendment to that that requires the board to promulgate rules and set out some specific things. Well, that's in the compounding section of the rules, and we have needed to update those rules for a long time because there's out-of-date references in there, like the way that you say class 100 instead of, you know, ISO whatever for a room or things like that. So, and I think most of our pharmacies, you know, whether it's 795 or 797, have updated to USP standards, like they've made large investments on it. And, you know, one approach is, well, we could just cite the USP standards. Like we've had years of this going on, and that's a whole lot cleaner than having several pages of, we're going to describe this one little section, but not this other little section, and help people with that. October dates, we do have some calendar potential conflicts in October. I'm pulling up my calendar if it is right. Yeah, I think we usually are looking for the second full week of October. That would generally put us on for the 14th and 15th of October. Are we closed for Columbus Day?
Columbus Day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't think so. For some reason, it's shown up twice on my calendar, but I'm thinking it's some automatic calendar. So my suggestion would be 14th and 15th. We just need to verify that that works for people's calendars. I mean, they were making sure I knew. I literally was handed a sign.
Here's your sign.
Yeah. Okay. 15, okay. If we've got everybody else, I'm sure we'd still have a quorum. I will reassure you, there's going to be a conflict sooner or later for a board meeting. We've all had it, including me. Sometimes it results in Dr. McCready and I sprinting through Chicago O'Hare trying to get from one meeting to another.
I say, tell them to wait for me.
Is that okay? You can come the 14th though? Okay. First day. We anticipate that October may be a very busy meeting for us, judging by just timelines on some stuff. We may need 3 days. Could you got a conflict 16th? Probably so.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay. I mean, we could do Monday. Monday gets difficult because if anything happens over the weekend, nobody knows it until Monday. Or if people are trying to get here. We have had a couple of times where we've actually scheduled board meeting Monday rather than necessarily reciprocity, although reciprocity is online now. That shouldn't be an issue. Used to be that if we had people trying to travel in for a Monday, it was very difficult. So do you guys want to try 13th through 15th or 14th through 16th? 13th? But do you teach it Tuesday, Thursday, is what you're saying? Yeah. Okay, yeah. 13th through 16th of October?
15.
13th through 15th.
I'm not doing 4 days.
What we will likely, do you guys want us to for sure plan the first 2 days or the last 2 days? You want us to start scheduling the 13th and 14th or the 14th and 15th? 13th, 14th? We can basically start building the schedule off the 13th, 14th then. Okay. Yeah, or even not have to have a third day. That work? What else I forget? Yes, sir, and the 15th.
3 days.
I don't have the marker to mark it as big on here. I have a version that I've already submitted or have presented like to my supervisor at ADH. You know, I do a review at APA every year, and it's funny because I have all these people saying, what are you going to present? What information you have? Well, what I literally have to present, I mean, you guys can see copies of it, is, you know, part of it is showing everyone that we have a new layout for the law book. Like I have a couple of slides on that. And then talking about here are different pieces of pharmacy legislation specific to the Board of Pharmacy. I'm not getting into what we are doing with them. I'm just showing people what they actually say. As much as anything we have, I've already had people confused about, you know, they're still calling it by the House bill or the Senate bill. So this will be the buzzword that, you know, people pick up on, but like HB 1150 became Act 624. But it's Act 624 of 2025. So trying to help lend some specificity of, well, if it was House Bill this of 2025 and it's Act this of 2025, those mean the same thing in reality because the act is the actual act itself. Going through that, showing some different data that, you know, some of the statutes have specific date requirements, like either when they are effective or when things have to be done by. I have one that says, I think one of them, I have to give a monthly report to the Legislative Council of what types of applications we've had, but there's actually a conflict in there because one of the applications is ambulatory care pharmacy clinic, and like that doesn't exist. Like that's not an application. Or it says I have to give the number of specialty pharmacies. I think a lot of people think a specialty pharmacy is a pharmacy of specialty drugs, but under our qualification, the way it's been named forever, specialty pharmacy is actually a methadone clinic. So it's 6, you know, charity pharmacy could be, you know, 1, but those are, I mean, we don't charge anything for them. They generally stick around because some of them only operate periodically. The dental clinic only operates once or twice a year. Some charity clinics work monthly, some of them try to do weekly, but those don't change much. That's really basically all it is. I do have a slide about like duplication of commercially available medications because we have so many issues to where, I mean, we're still answering GLP-1 questions on almost a daily basis. We recently had someone that put it out and it wound up on like a APRN Facebook group that the Board of Pharmacy has new rules that APRNs can't prescribe any compounds. And we're going, and so I was getting hit with it big last week and then finally found out what was going on. I was like, no, we don't have any new rules on this at all. Yeah, it's an existing rules. It's been here longer than I've been here. It's because the FDA always said, if you're making essentially a copy of a commercial product, that you have a specific patient clinical need for a change in the ingredients or excipients, which we saw back with like NECC Emeritus. It was the claim that this is going to be a central spinal injection, therefore people need it to be preservative free. Well, the problem was if you have a product that has something in it, it can continue to grow in a preservative free environment. But our rule kind of matched FDA. FDA always said that only a pharmacist or physician could even compound those products. So our rule, when it was written before I was here, said that only a physician can order those products for pharmacy to produce it. And I think we've had a lot of pharmacies that just have ignored that and go, oh, physician means prescriber, which it does not. And I think we have had out-of-state pharmacies, namely permitted with us, and out-of-state pharmacies that did not even have a permit, that we have found a couple as of recent, that were shipping those products with added vitamins, B vitamins, L-carnitine, stuff like that to the products. That's a whole different issue. Like that is literally taking a commercial available product and a commercially available product and combining the two. And there's a whole nother argument of that's not essentially a copy of a commercial product. That's a whole new unapproved drug. Because if they're both available as injectables with, infinite variability in dosing, putting the two together and saying that, well, every one of my patients needs it with this ingredient, I personally believe that FDA would look at that as that's a whole new drug, not something that a patient has an allergy to. This is a pill, but the patient that I had that was allergic to a specific color dye could not take this brand of capsules because it was a gold capsule that had this yellow dye in it. It's different. That's basically it. That's all I can really talk about. I am going to give just a quick update on the gold card legislation we had from 2023. As most of you remember, we actually had, I think the final number that I have here is we had 1,350 requests for drugs. Now, not all of those were unique. There was a lot of repetition in there, but our board and the medical board, the subcommittees, thank you guys, Brian, for meeting on that stuff, as well as the medical board subcommittee, looked at them, set criteria. We applied the criteria to others and approved 1,032 of the requests were actually granted to have that. We have found out since then that the third-party appeals process has happened. I try to ask questions of, are we only seeing the approvals or are there any rejections? My understanding is that every appeal that has been made has been approved. I'm unaware of any that were rejected, but those appeals cost, I think a few of them may have cost like $300, but I think they cost like $3,000 a piece. The fascinating thing of that is, we did not have the ability to charge for any of this review process. We did all of the prep with our staff here in office. We had a couple of rotation students that were helpful in that, just taking large quantities of data to organize it. But if we would have charged the same as a third party, it would have been anywhere from like $400,000 to $4 million just to do the reviews that we did. And people would argue, well, you didn't go through all the scientific information and everything else, but we did have expert pharmacists and physicians review all of this at no charge. The last thing I've got that I want to review with people based on some of the more recent cases that we have had is the fact of, are you ready for your next inspection? And if you have not reviewed your last inspection, then you probably are not ready for your next inspection. And then I've actually got some actual screenshots of things that have been shown on inspection that when the inspectors went back in, and it could be, Brandon this time and Lindsay next time, like they shouldn't see the same errors that whoever was there last, either them or someone else pointed out to somebody. And we have pharmacies that have repeated violations. And it's basically a lesson of, hey, you need to set up a time period and periodically look at the inspection, look at the things that are on it, but especially pay attention to what you were non-compliant with or what you had notes on from the inspector investigator to make corrections. Because when they come back, they're going to look at that to see if it was fixed. And if you repeat inspection violations, wind up getting you a visit before the board. Anything else you guys want me to throw in there? You should go on Thursday to the association meeting though to see Beth Ann present. No, that's not the last slot. That's just the last slot on Thursday. I think I'm the last slot on Friday, like the end. I think so. Cause I'll be at ACP coming back to give my presentation. Sometimes. I think that's all I've got finally now. All right. Thank you, guys.